Yes, the ancient Middle East had forms of civil law. Now, it's not exactly the same as we would think about it today. I would say in the ancient Middle East, they had three general categories of law. The first would be wrongs against the king or the gods, and those were the most serious and carried the most serious penalties. The second might fit our category of criminal law, and this would be serious wrongs against another citizen. So this would include murder or theft or adultery or false accusation in court, which could be a dangerous thing to do. Then there was a third category that had to do with more minor wrongs. And this would kind of fit our category of civil law, but this would be when you didn't pay the full price for something you purchased, you didn't repay a loan on time, you divorced your spouse without a good reason, adoption contracts or other types of contracts that went wrong somehow. These would fall into the category of civil law, but they still might go to the same officials that they might go to in the case of a more serious criminal issue. So in the case of divorce, for example, a man could divorce his wife for just any reason he wanted to, but if he didn't have a good reason, he had to pay her a substantial financial settlement before he sent her away. If he had a good reason, then he could send her away without paying a financial settlement. And sometimes these cases had to go to a judge to determine whether or not he actually had a good reason to divorce his wife. If someone didn't repay a loan on time, there were various measures that could be taken to deal with that. But sometimes they had to go to a judge to decide if the person had or had not paid their loan on time, and was there documentation or were there witnesses who could verify one story or the other. So in those cases, I would say they do compare fairly well to what we would call civil law. With these cases that I'm calling civil law, the more minor harms that might be committed, the penalties were usually financial in nature. With the more serious harms, the penalties would still end up being financial, but you were always under the threat of some kind of physical penalty being imposed. So if you steal someone else's goods, in theory, they could cut your hand off, but really what that does, that punishment hanging over your head, it puts you in a very bad negotiating position. So as you begin to negotiate for the fine that you'll have to end up paying, the person you're negotiating with can always say, I don't like what you're offering, let's go back to the physical punishment of cutting off your hand. And then you might say, okay, I give in, I'll pay the higher fine, the greater compensation to make up for the theft that I committed. Now, could you sue a king or a pharaoh or some high official for treating you badly? You might be able to sue a high official by appealing to the king if you could get the king's attention or get a friend to get the king's attention for you. But to sue the king was basically unheard of in that time. The king made the law, the king was the law. The king really only had to answer to the gods.